For the sake of time, let's get to it. So our LEQ has been the same for a couple of videos now. What are the 3 additional market structures that represent imperfect competition? So in part 2 of this video series, we covered monopolies, and now we're going to cover something called oligopolies. And you guys can bet, part 4, we're covering monopolies and competition, but the nature of tonight's video has to do with oligopolies. So the Greek word mono means one. The Greek root word oli means a few or several. So what is an oligopoly? The best way to describe oligopolies is to look at the characteristics of them. So what I'd recommend doing if I were you guys, as you were writing these characteristics down, I would pull up your notebook or your cell phone and look at the characteristics of monopolies and perfect competition and see how they compare and contrast. Hint, hint, wink, wink, that will help you out substantially. So if a monopoly is domination by one seller and perfect competition is numerous sellers, an oligopoly, oli, means a few. That is just a few companies, and I will always, there is no number cutoff, I will make it obvious for you, but a few companies, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, something like that, I'll always make it obvious, own 70 to 80% of the entire market share for that product. And I'm going to do more examples of that here in just a moment. And just like monopolies, there are also barriers to entry with oligopolies. Capital costs are high. For example, it's very cheap, relatively speaking, to open up an Italian restaurant. It is not very cheap, aka it is stupid expensive, to try to open up your own airline industry, our cell phone company. So a huge barrier to entry to oligopolies is that they're just simply so darn expensive. It is difficult for any new company to enter a market structure that's controlled by oligopolists. Okay, another characteristic of oligopolies, and number 3 is very important. We're going to spend a lot of time on this one in class. Identical or slightly different products. So one of the things about oligopolies is that they sell the similar products, but they're slightly different. And I'm going to explain that here in a moment. And then number 4, which I will also spend more time on in a moment, is interdependence. So if independence means my actions do not affect anyone else, think about the farmer example. If there are 10 farmers at a farmer market and all 10 of them sell tomatoes for the exact same price, if one of those 10 farmers decides to throw in the towel, say, hey, you know what, I'm retiring, and they're not going to show up to the farmer's market next weekend, is that going to have any long-term effect on the other tomato farmers? No, it's not. Not many people are even going to notice. It's not going to send ripples through the market. Interdependence, so contrast that with independence. Interdependence is when if a business makes a decision or a move, it does have a drastic impact in that industry, in that particular oligopoly. So these are best explained through examples. Most consumer products are oligopolies. Take a look at these companies I have here. These companies, in their particular industry, these companies own the majority of the market share. Again, 70 to 80%, 90%, 95%. They own the majority. If you want a soft drink, Pepsi and Coke are the gods of that industry. Yes, it's true. There are off-brands of soft drinks. But Publix brand soft drinks does not have nearly as large a market share as Pepsi and Coke. That's it. 2 companies, it means a few. In the soft drink industry, the soft drink industry is an oligopoly. It's Pepsi or Coke. Those are the big 2. In the airline industry, that is an oligopoly. There are more than what's listed here, but again, there's about maybe 15 to 20 major airlines that fly out of places here in Central Florida. That's definitely an oligopoly because it meets all the conditions. Cereal. Yes, there is generic off-brand cereal, but it does not represent the majority of the industry. If you buy cereal, chances are it's made by General Mills or Kellogg's. Cell phone service providers, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint. If you get a cell phone, those are your options. That is simply a few. And also we have automobile manufacturers, Ford, General Motors, Toyota, Volkswagen. These are all examples of oligopolies because they fit these 4 characteristics. So take a look at this example again. I'm going to pick on Pepsi and Coke. Characteristic number 1, domination by a few sellers. Absolutely. Barriers to entry. If I wanted to start my own soda manufacturing business, I could do so, but I would not be able to compete with Pepsi and Coke. I might be able to start my own soda manufacturing business and sell to people here in Lakeland, but that's little old Lakeland. Pepsi and Coke sell to the entire world. They own the majority of the market. And Pepsi and Coke, they both sell soda, but Pepsi tastes different than Coke. It's soda, but it's different. So the products are slightly different. And interdependence. Any action Pepsi takes is going to affect Coke. The opposite is also true. Any action Coke takes is going to affect Pepsi. So let's look at the characteristic number 3 and 4 in more detail. So characteristic number 3 of oligopolies is slightly different products. So here's a term I need you all to know. That term is product differentiation. We've hinted at this at class several times. So you will find product differentiation only in oligopolies and monopolistic competition. Remember, we have not covered monopolistic competition yet. We're going to in part 4 of this video series. So here's what product differentiation is. Manufacturers use of minor differences in quality and features to try to differentiate between similar goods and services. So look, Pepsi and Coke are very similar. They are both soft drinks. They are both the flagship soft drinks of those particular companies. But they taste different. They really do. So Pepsi claims that Pepsi tastes better. Coke claims that Coke tastes better. So what they do is they will spend millions of dollars advertising, trying to influence demand through influencing consumers' tastes and preferences to convince us that, hey, even though even though a soda is a soda is a soda is a soda, our soda is better because of blah, 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 blah. Polar bears drink it. So however you want to phrase it. Companies try to make their product different to make it seem better. A Big Mac is a hamburger. A Whopper is a hamburger. But McDonald's is trying their best to convince you the Big Mac tastes better because blah, 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 blah. Burger King is trying its best to convince you that the Whopper tastes better because blah, 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 blah. For instance, there are only a few cell phone service providers in America. Think about Verizon and Sprint and T-Mobile. They all provide approximately the same service. You can argue who's better, so on and so forth. But they will spend millions of dollars in advertising to convince us Verizon is the best because blah, 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 blah. T-Mobile is the best because we're cheapest. So on and so forth, even though they're providing the same product. Now let's look at that fourth characteristics of oligopolies, and that is interdependent behavior. So if independent behavior means my actions don't affect anyone else in the industry, interdependent means my actions will impact other people in the industry. Now, remember, I want you guys to remember about competition. A price war is good for consumers in the short run, but can have negative long-term consequences. For instance, a 2-liter Pepsi and a 2-liter of Coke are the same price. Unless one's on sale, they are the same price. Remember, competition is good for consumers. However, what if the CEO of Pepsi and the CEO of Coke were to get together and they were to say this, hey, you know what? We own this soda industry. This soda industry is us. We don't care about Walmart brand or Publix brand. Worldwide, it's Pepsi and Coke. So Pepsi and Coke are in a dark room, back alley, talking something else. Like, you know what? I don't think $2 for a 2-liter is expensive enough. Now, if I raise my prices according to demand, more people are going to buy Pepsi. That's true. If Coke triples its price, more people buy Pepsi. And yes, I know there are Coke fanatics who the demand for Coke is inelastic because they're going to buy it no matter what. But in general, most people buy Pepsi. And Pepsi's like, well, you know what? I want to raise my prices, but then people buy your price. But what if we both raise our prices together? It won't matter. That is something called collusion, and collusion is illegal. We will be talking about collusion more in class. LEQ and review. Okay. Today we talked about imperfect competition. Specifically, we talked about oligopolies. We mentioned the 4 characteristics of oligopolies. As all these characteristics, I would highly recommend maybe even making a table so you can quickly compare and contrast the characteristics of perfect competition versus the characteristics of market structures in an imperfectly competitive market, aka monopolies, oligopolies, and monopolies of competition. Appreciate you watching the video. You guys have a good one.
Hello fam, this is Katie Edwards, and what it do?